You're watching Sci-Fi Saturday, discussion and analysis of all your favorite sci-fi TV shows, only on the Anthony James YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome back to our Star Trek Discovery discussion review. Well, this week I'm back here with Emmett, as always. Emmett, how are you this week?
I'm doing good, again, another week done, and another week closer to Christmas, which is rapidly approaching, and I need to maybe get some more gifts sorted out.
Yeah, it is rapidly approaching, and I always leave, I've got like a basket full, full of gifts, and I always wait till too late to order them, and there's always at least one person I'll do that today. I'll order all the gifts.
We'll set this aside. We'll both get our Christmas gifts sorted out soon. You know?
That's our plan for the week. So next week, when we come back for episode 6, we'll have to say, did you get your Christmas gifts ordered?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So this week in Star Trek Discovery, we finally came across the Federation. Well, what did you think? Now, this is going to go in stages, I'm sure. But what did you think initially of like the moment they went through into that? What do you call that? Like, it's like a protective bubble. Like, what would you?
Yeah, it was like a disruption field, or a cloaking field, or something like that.
Yeah, like cloaks their position. Mm-hmm.
I was low-key worried. I don't know about you. I was low-key worried with the tone of the season so far. I was kind of worried that they were going to go in and find either that they'd been hit by something and the ships were all destroyed, or there'd only be like one ship. But we got sort of a, it's not a huge fleet, but we actually do have, something a bit more. I don't know if maybe, did you feel the same thing? Did you think we were going to be like, oh no, like it's all gone?
I thought that something like that was going to happen. I continued to think that even when they went into the Federation base and they started talking, I thought to myself, because they were so suspicious of Discovery, it made sense that they were. But for me, for a while, I was really nervous that actually their suspicion created suspicion for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You thought that they were going to reveal that they weren't actually Federation. It was like some sort of trap. It's like a Federation trap where they lure Federation ships in and like capture the crews and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. But to be honest with you, the fact that it wasn't was great. I actually really, really liked the new design of like the way they came in and all the ships were docked, and I'm not sure actually what I think about the new badge.
The new uniforms and stuff are quite sleek. I quite like them. Though, to be fair, I will always, we've seen it with Captain Pike and Spock in last season. I am a sucker for the red, blue, and yellow designs of uniforms. If you like, where you can kind of very immediately, clearly tell what department they're sort of from just by looking at them. And
looking at their colors,
it does. It sort of reminds me of some of the uniforms and such we maybe seen in like some of the movies once or twice. But like I like them. I think they're nice, sort of sleekness to them.
Yeah,
sort of clean, very clean.
Yeah, no, I didn't dislike it, but I found myself having to squint to see the Starfleet the Starfleet logo.
The emblem of the Federation there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really like the silhouette of the big sort of shape of it on the chest. Like the Discovery crew have. I like that. Having said that, like there has obviously been badges. The main badge, I think, of Next Generation didn't actually have the shape. I think that wasn't a full shape, was it? I think it was more of an oval.
I'm trying to think. It's always hard to remember exactly, but they've switched up the design of the badges several times throughout the series, in the same way that they've switched up the uniforms. So I can. As much as I do love the red, blue, and yellow sort of designs, I can't be too precious about it. They're always going to like change up how Starfleet looks, because that's just the way it's part of the marketing. They need to sell new uniforms.
New uniforms, new toys, all that sort of thing. Also, there was a little sneak peek of the Voyager.
Yes. Oh, that was a very nice. I think that little reference was for the fans, and also to sort of indicate, that they're aware of the fact that they're sort of treading in similar spaces to Voyager, in the sense of they're a ship that was disconnected from the Federation and has now found its way home. So I feel like that was a very clear homage, and it was very nice. And I also think it was hinting at the fact, because on Voyager we had a very important member of the crew who was a hologram, the Doctor, called the Doctor, for most of the run. I think it was sort of foreshadowing the fact that we were about to encounter a few more holograms in this episode.
Quite a few. So one thing I really liked about the start is that the crew were just as excited as we were to finally come home to the Federation. Like, I was really excited to see, and all the design, I wanted to see, like, them get home and everything. So when the crew was all really excited, it was great. And I love the way in this first few episodes, there's been so much development put into the crew's relationship with each other. Like the moment they went to the tree on Earth, the moment they had the dinner. It's so much crew work. Then they were watching the old film. So much work has been put in to the point where I really feel it's a real realistic, portrayal of sort of the banter and, like, they're all excited to be doing their job together. It just feels like a real workplace to me.
It's referenced later in the episode when they have the Federation security officer. It's like they're dysfunctional, but they work. If you get me, They know they found their rhythm with each other, and it's very. I have in these early episodes of season 3, I've enjoyed watching everyone come together, have their fights, but also be able to find the common ground. It's a very family sort of dynamic in there,
Yeah, and then obviously that is compounded later on whenever we find out that they have to split up. Well, yes. Potentially split up, I suppose, now that we've seen the whole episode. But so then we come across, we come into the main Federation, and we're introduced to the Admiral.
Vance.
Admiral Vance, played by I can't remember his name, but he's the fella from The Mummy.
Yes.
And he's also what's his name?
He's playing a very different character than in The Mummy, though.
Yeah. Very, very different character.
Yeah. This Admiral Vance is confident, cool, collected, and very suspicious about everything and everyone.
Yeah,
and
as he should be.
Yeah, I feel like he is a great touchstone to where the Federation is as an organization, in the sense of, like, they're on their last legs. It's been stress, as he says later on in the episode. They've been in triage for a long time, just dealing with threats as they come in like that, and now they're maybe getting to change up their game, but they're suspicious of the Discovery, because it's like, we don't have any information on you, we can't just immediately trust you, we need more information. So no, I loved him this episode. He was fantastic.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of a hint as to what a future threat in the series might be, because there was a mention of the Choyahoga is reporting Orion and Andorian vessels in the Sigma Draconis system. It's the Emerald. It's the Emerald Chain.
The Emerald Chain. Well, we've already seen the Andorians and the Orions, and the fact that they're now linked together with the first episodes of Discovery, where we've seen Michael encountering a bit of trouble, which is very interesting, because the Andorians were actually one of the first Federation member races, and now they've broken away with the Orions, who were oftentimes portrayed mostly as space pirates. So it's a very interesting switch up to the
Andorians have joined them in their piracy.
Yeah. It's desperate times, desperate measures,
Yeah, and Osira was a name mentioned. Osira has been becoming more brazen by the day. Yeah. That just made me think, okay, I think we're gonna have some trouble with these Orion Andorians soon. So that'll be interesting to see. And then obviously the main plot point of the episode comes into play, and it is the Kili refugees, and they are being. Thank God it's non. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I can't remember the word.
Oh, it's non-infectious.
Non-infectious, non-contagious. So prions are affecting them, and they are basically look like they're all going to die. And basically, this sets up the whole storyline. They have to go to the seed bank to retrieve a particular seed so that they can use it to create an antidote. What did you think of this storyline within the episode where we're back at the Federation? Did you think it fit? Did you think it was good?
Well, so I think I don't know if it's just this episode, but we've had a few indications of this prior in the season. There seems to be a lot of symbolism around the idea of plants and growth in this season. Like, when we come in and see the Federation, like, the way that it's designed, it almost kind of looks like a massive tree where there's like this big central column with all these sort of branches linking out to the other ships. And then obviously with the seed bank, it's taking something from the distant past to fix a problem in the present, which can be very easily read as symbolism for Discovery coming from the past to help fix the Federation in their, in their current difficulties.
Yeah.
And then we've also seen things like the tree in the tree at the base of the Federation, and I'm just saying I noted down some other stuff. And the spore drive itself, like there's a lot of focus around these ideas of like naturalistic,
organic,
organic, and they even mentioned that some of the ships within this have like sort of organic hulls, or like partially organic hulls. So it's like, there seems to be a lot of symbolism. So I think the seed bank itself makes sense from a symbolic standpoint of being a thing from the past, and a thing that seems to be linked in with this plant-like theme that we've sort of got ongoing. Again, I might be reading far too much into it, but it's just what I've been sort of seeing, sort of thinking back over the season. So I think it makes sense, and I love the design of the seed bank and the seed ship itself. It was very nice.
Oh yeah, no, I really enjoyed that too. The vault.
Yes.
And then obviously there's issues there when we get there, but we get basically a scene now with Charles Vance, the Admiral, and he brings a little something to the attention of Saru and Michael that maybe they didn't think of, is that technically they're criminals now because it is illegal to travel through time. I thought it was really interesting that it sort of sets up the idea it's illegal to travel through time because they don't want you to change the past or the future. So this is a question I have for you. At some point throughout Star Trek, has there been a moment where they've changed the past which altered the future? I think there was in the first Star Trek J.J. Abrams film, there was a little bit of stuff going on with Spock there. But has there been a massive thing where they've had to go back and change the timeline which changed the future? Has that happened before?
Lots of times, again, with a sci-fi show, going back in time and altering timelines and stuff like that is like, you've noted one of the most massive examples, the J.J. Abrams films being a completely different universe, the Kelvin timeline, as the fan base likes to call it, because of them going back in time and destroying the USS Kelvin, which and then
Vulcan, and then the planet Vulcan blew up too.
It is blown up as well, and then in the shows itself, we've experienced a lot of time travel where and there was even an organization, I can't remember the name of it, but essentially like the successor almost to Starfleet, where it's like the Time Fleet. I can't remember the name of it right now. Where
Space Force,
Time Force. Wait, that's Power Rangers. Anyways, like where they would try and stop these incursions into time. But we've seen in like Voyager, there was a species that had this like time erasure gun system that they used, and in Next Gen we had the yesterday's Enterprise, where they unintentionally like mixed with the timeline and created a timeline where the Klingons and Starfleet were still at war and it was going poorly. And then even in Star Trek First Contact, which is one of my favorite Star Trek films, the Borg attempt to go back in time to like basically convert or assimilate the Federation before it can be properly formed. So it makes sense that and then in Enterprise, the TV show, there was the plot line of the temporal civil war. So it completely makes sense that they have all these laws in place being like, everybody stop messing with the timeline for like 20 minutes. Like let us look at the history books and make sure that it's all lining up properly, because we don't know what's going on.
That's hilarious. And like, obviously, you, as you put it there, there's so many examples. Obviously, whenever I was just saying, I was asking you whether there's any more examples of it rather than the J.J. Abrams film. I'm sure any Star Trek fans watching were just screaming, "Yes!"
Like I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface. I can like, even in the episode that I mentioned previously from Discovery's Crash, Timeless. That was a whole time travel episode as well, where they go back and stop the crash of Voyager to save the crew.
Okay.
I feel like I'm probably exaggerating for the sake of like hyperbole, but I feel like there's almost at least one episode per season of the show where time travel is involved in some shape or form and completely rewrites the timeline for a bit.
Okay, so it's interesting to me because I was just wondering, like, the reason why I asked was I was wondering whether Star Trek has fully bought into the idea of changing things, or have they sometimes been more of a predetermined model? Like, has it ever been that they went back in time to change something, but they actually caused it? Has that ever happened?
Well, there's been little bits about like the first ever. I'm forgetting the name of it, the episode at the moment, but Spock and Kirk and Bones, etc. They go back in time through this time gate. That might actually have been the name of the episode. And there was a little bit of that idea of like predetermination versus free will.
Yeah.
I do believe though that generally speaking, as a show, Star Trek comes down on the notion of not predetermination but free will.
Yeah.
Because I think that fits in more in keepingly with the tone of the show,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. That would make sense as well, just because of how much times they change the past and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Usually by the end of the episode they like undo the changes to the timeline or fix the timeline from the dark timeline and stuff. But there's a lot of close calls with those timeline shenanigans. Let's say.
Yeah. Well. Look who's in the episode, Mr. David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg shows up, and he seems to be very interested in Giorgio. So Giorgio gets rid of the holograms with a load of blinks. What did you? That looked a bit silly the first time she did it, but yeah. What do you think?
I thought she was having a stroke for a minute.
Yeah.
No, it was very interesting. Like it's a very techno-babbly way of getting rid of the holograms, but it's a very in keeping with Giorgio as a character. I enjoyed that interaction between her and that mysterious gentleman with the glasses.
Kovic, I think his name's Kovic, played by David Cronenberg, of course, the director of The Fly.
Yes, well, again, he is. He has a great presence on screen, and I immediately was like, is he Section 31? Is he like the modern day equivalent to Section 31? Because he's wearing the dark colors. He's very mysterious. He's interested in Giorgio because she's like a Terran, and also she did work with Section 31 before. And their conversation is quite revealing and it has I think more of an impact on Giorgio than she expected going into it with what he reveals, to her.
As far as I grasped from it, he mentioned that he was born in 2063.
Yeah, I might have missed that bit because I was like so focused on like the other bits that he was saying. But it's unless
it was 3063, that would make more sense, I suppose. But I saw 2063, and I was like, what?
Yeah. Oh, he might say.
Or maybe that's Terran. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, it might be one of those situations where, maybe he was cryogenically frozen. We've seen a lot of ways of bringing people into this modern era. But I thought that the thing that I sort of fixated on, and I think also Giorgio was fixated on, was his revelation that the Terran Empire has fallen and fell centuries ago. And, I think that shocked Giorgio right to her core, because I think she's always held in her mind this idea that the Terran Empire was stronger than the Federation, was more powerful, and was better than the Federation. But the idea that like not only did the Terran Empire fall, it fell centuries ago. Whereas even though the Federation is in a bad place, it still exists. Yeah, and I think that's really her, especially because she was the Empress, and like I feel like she feels a certain level of personal responsibility for the fall of the Empire. So and like. We seen it at the end of the episode where she was much like Lieutenant Detmer was like in a shell-shocked sort of moment of like not even registering Michael for a minute there when she was talking to her.
Yeah, it's like this is actually the bit that has broken Giorgio a bit, whereas obviously coming through to a different time and everything, that broke the rest of the crew a little bit, like it made them sort of all the mental health is all over the place, and it took this moment for Giorgio to sort of get to the same wavelength as the rest of the crew, maybe.
Yeah, it's like, because she only really cares ultimately, I feel, about Michael and the Terran Empire. She came with the crew because she still cares about Michael, views Michael as a daughter to a certain extent, and wants to see her do well. But like the Terran Empire was her home, it was her empire. She was the Empress. Yeah. She was responsible for its expansion and its survival. And now that she finds out that it's gone, it's challenging her whole existence and way in life, because she's been making a lot of like snide comments to like Saru and other people about like how her way is better, but now she's finding that her way just ultimately led to an earlier death of the Empire than the Federation. Exactly. So it's like it's challenging her on like a fundamental core level that I enjoy.
Yeah, it was really great. So they then get the mission. They actually finally convince the admiral, to let them go and try and save these Kili refugees. So they head into the seed bank. I'll tell you what. If an antidote could be made in 3 hours, I'd love to go into the future and get them to make a vaccine for coronavirus in 3 hours.
You and me both, my friends. You and me both.
So we finally are getting a bit more payoff in terms of the Detmer storyline. She faltered a little bit at the wheel here, and she almost sort of cost them the seed bank. Like they were almost unable to take it out of that cloud or whatever that was, because
she's still struggling with her PTSD. But I think the important thing that we notice is I don't think she maybe recognizes it, but she is recovering. She didn't freeze up entirely.
Yeah.
She was able to get back in control and rescue the mission. Like she obviously holds herself to such a high standard, because she's like should have been cleaner than that. But I think this is all part of her recovery period. She's still getting there, but she again, it wasn't clean, but
she did.
Don't always have to do a clean job.
She got it done.
A win.
And and all the rest of the crew as well were just like, great job. Like even if she didn't feel it, like they knew. Like, we're all going through some stuff. You did it. Well done, you know?
Well, we're all our own harshest critics, so to speak, So I feel that on some level, and I'm sure you do as well,
Oh, no, of course.
We've all been in that sort of place where we just can't, even when we do well, we can't give ourselves that credit. And I feel like, I just want to hug her, Again, she's got those adorable puppy eyes. You just want to give her like a blanket and be like, you did great.
Yeah, you did great. Yeah. Well, she's got one puppy eye and the other one is like a weird, I don't know, cyborg eye. Yeah. So this episode, as we've been talking, like certain crew members have got real sort of highlighted this episode. This season, every episode highlights a new character. This episode comes around to Commander Nhan. Now, Commander Nhan is a character who we've seen a little bit of in the past. Obviously, the way she came to the Discovery was a really interesting storyline, and then she decided to stay. Almost in a way because they needed to get her off the ship that she was on.
She was needed to make room for other characters.
Am I right in thinking she was on the Enterprise?
She was part of Pike's crew.
Yeah, exactly.
Correctly. And the reason that she stayed with the Discovery obviously was because of the death of one of their officers who was able to sort of sacrifice herself to try and save everyone else while Control was taking over her sort of robotic body.
Yeah.
So really Commander Nhan wanted to sort of honor that sacrifice as a as a character that clearly believes strongly in honor and those sorts of tenets. Yeah,
exactly. So Commander Nhan, this really is her episode in terms of the focus of the storyline, and we find out that actually her people, the Barzan people, have actually been part of the Federation. This has happened all time and time again. The Kelpians are now part of the Federation. The Barzans are part of the Federation. So it seems like this is a big thing for all these outcasts from their society, that they're actually, fast forward 1,000 years or whatever, then all of a sudden your whole society has sort of come around to your way of thinking. It must be very cathartic for her.
Yeah, no, it's something we've seen oftentimes at the Federation. We'll have like people who are from societies that aren't typically part of the Federation, and then we might see like flash forwards where like, oh look, these people who were once our enemy or once were a neutral party have joined us. We've been able to find common ground and find that unity. So I think it's very in keeping with Star Trek in general, but I also think it's very reflective of the fact that we're so far in the future, because obviously humanity to a certain extent has broken away from the Federation. The Andorians have broken away from the Federation, but then like the Kelpians and Nan's people have apparently are members of it. So the Federation has shifted, but it still is alive in some form.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. And I like the idea that she didn't have to wear her breathing apparatus, because they all had to get the breathing apparatus, and when her eyes changed color too. Sorry.
Yeah, fair play to that actress. That does not look like a fun thing to have to wear on the side of your face.
Yeah. Like she looks like she's got two Britney Spears microphones on.
Yeah, Oh yes, like she's giving us two separate presentations at once.
Yeah,
Welcome to my TED Talk and welcome to my other TED Talk.
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to give them at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. So they make it into the seed bank. Very dark seed bank, and It seems like it's deserted to a certain extent. We quickly find out that the people, the bars and people who were the family who were sort of overseeing the seed bank, they became infected, and three of them have sadly passed away. And the father is trying to find a cure, and he's very hostile to the crew of the Discovery because he views them as sort of, I don't know, maybe it's out of protection for his family, but he wants to protect the seeds as well. Anyway, what did you find about like his welcome to them? It's strange to say welcome, like, but
yeah, it's he's been in this situation for quite some time, and he's obviously the literal father of this family, the patriarch, and he obviously wants to protect them. Unfortunately, obviously, we come to realize that that's just not possible. They're unfortunately gone, and a lot of it is again sort of tying in with another theme of this season: mourning loss and having to sort of move forward despite it.
yeah,
It sort of ties in with that, and not letting our losses dictate our future in the sense of like giving up. So like it sort of tied in with that quite well. I felt very bad for him. We only knew him for a little bit, and we only seen little glimpses of his family life. But I think we've all lost people close to us at different points, and that's still sort of touching home. He's obviously in this. Again, maybe a metaphor that wasn't particularly subtle, but like he's sort of phasing in between out of reality and stuff like that, and that's kind of where his mental space is at the moment. Yeah. Another transporter accident in Star Trek, par for the course. Everyone uses a transporter and something weird happens at some point. This is commonplace with Star Trek. I'm just surprised it took us this long to get a transporter accident in Discovery, I think.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Like I really like the point you made there about his mental state is sort of in phase as well. It's 100% believable. Like when you're in the midst of grief, it really is. You're in this weird in between stage where you don't really know what to feel. You feel like you're still that person you used to be before when the person who's passed away is still there, but you don't want to move on. So it makes complete sense, and I think that's a really astute observation, Emmett. Well done.
Thank you. And I think it's also important to note that he is also isolated, adrift, trapped in a place. There's all these levels of the symbolism of loss sort of baked into his physical danger situation. So the writers knew exactly what they were sort of doing with a lot of those layers.
Yeah, of course, and like the whole thing comes to a conclusion because they managed to beam him into the seed bank with Michael. And Hugh, and then they actually sort of talk him round, I suppose, and they sort of have an intervention,
a crisis therapy session. That's
yeah, exactly. And he says that he doesn't want to come back up to the Discovery, even though he's only got a few days to live. He doesn't want to leave his family. Which this causes Commander Nhan to make the decision that she's going to stay as well. I got under the impression, like, is she saying that she'll stay in order to get their obviously to get their bodies back, but someone has to take care of the seeds. Is that
So from what I understood of the episode, this seed ship that they have, the seed bank, seems to be a Federation tradition where it's passed from a family to another family to sort of cultivate, maintain, and keep safe.
Yeah.
And it's her people's turn. And if they pass away, then that's going to sort of mess up the whole situation. So Nhan is staying behind because our friend here is unfortunately refusing care, and you can't force care upon people when they they don't want it, which is fair enough. Bodily autonomy is sort of important. It's sad, obviously, that he's going to pass away. They have the means of treating him, but I can understand his position of maybe not wanting to continue without his family. I wish he would reconsider, but he can't. So I think she's taking the baton and carrying it for her people to ensure that they get the seed bank to where it needs to be, and then it will be passed over. I think maybe that means, unfortunately, we're not going to see Nan again, maybe this season, but maybe next season. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe she'll come back when the next family takes over. It's
Yeah.
interesting that the first big sort of storyline episode for her is perhaps her last episode in the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things of like we talked about it last week where, the lack of filler episodes means that the main story moves along very quickly, but it also does mean that we don't maybe have as much time to play around with these characters before we have to move them on to the next stage.
Yeah.
It's actually great that we're getting time with Detmer and some of the other crew members, like with her going through post-traumatic stress disorder, and we're following that arc outwards,
Yeah.
So, again, as much as I'm sad to see Nan go, and I wish we had her for a bit longer, I unfortunately understand the pragmatism of unfortunately having to let some characters go to make room on the crew for others.
Yeah, exactly. Like there does have to be a certain amount of turnover in a show like this to have new exciting characters. And let's be honest, by the time the show finishes, who knows how many seasons, you can't have 50 main characters. So you do have to, unfortunately, let it go. I'm sure the actress didn't like it, but.
Maybe she was moving on to a new project. You never know with people. It's very interesting. Like I think it's a learning experience for a lot of Star Trek fans because I think we are used to having a pretty static main cast for the most part. You'll have maybe one or two people switching up, but Discovery is a lot more fluid in that regard. Like new captain pretty much every season. Crew members switches around and stuff like that. Michael, Saru, and maybe one or two other people are our only real, like Tilly and Paul and Hugh, are maybe our only real main holdouts that are always there.
Yeah.
But then we have so many fluid characters that can kind of come in and out.
Yeah. It is interesting. So I'm excited to see who's going to join the ranks. Soon enough. I suppose we have Adira Tal now. So
yes, Adira. Yes, she's our latest addition to the crew. I didn't realize we were talking about this last episode, and I won't go on to. I didn't realize that the Grey's actor was trans.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize.
And I also, but also the actress, the actor who plays Adira Tal is non-binary, so they them.
Oh, interesting! I didn't know that either. It's very. I'm liking our additions to the crew on that front as well. Because if I'd known that, I would have talked more about that. Because I feel like the gender issues, or not the gender issues, but the switching of genders when it comes to a Trill is very interesting from a trans/non-binary standpoint. Obviously, as two cis white men, we don't necessarily have the full ins and outs of it. But again, I have exploring.
I have to say, I found out that the actor who plays Adira Tal was non-binary after seeing the episode. But I'm gonna just say, like, for the first ever non-binary character within Star Trek, it makes complete sense that they would have a symbiote inside them. It makes complete sense. It's a perfect marriage of character and gender identity, I find.
Yeah, no, I hope they explore a little bit more about gender identity in the coming episodes with Adira and stuff like that. That is so fascinating to me. Again, I really wish I had known that in the original episode because I would have been trying to read more into the sort of gender analysis. But I love Adira and I love Grey, so.
Yeah. Like I agree, and I'm interested to see where that relationship goes. I'd like to see how Grey whether Grey will get any character development now that he's technically not here anymore, or whether we'll just see him. Maybe he'll just be like the conscience of Adira going forward. Maybe I'm interested. Like I was watching a review of last episode as well by a trans YouTuber. I can't quite remember the name, but I'll put it in the description. And they were talking about the portrayal of Grey, and I think she was talking about the idea of Grey. Apparently, there's a phenomena called killing the gaze or something like.
Oh, bury your gaze.
Bury your gaze. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it's an unfortunate trope that happens, and unfortunately, Discovery has had their own fumbles with this before when they killed off Hugh originally, but. It's a recurring situation in a lot of mainstream media where they will introduce a gay character to kill off that gay character later, and for tragedy and pathos and stuff, and it's a real shame because it's like why do we need to always kill off these characters on the LGBT spectrum? You know, it's a frustrating fact, and that was sort of, now that I know that Adira is non-binary, that is sort of reassuring. But I was sort of like, when I found out that Grey's actor was trans, I was like, oh, I sort of wish that Grey was then the one that got to stick around. You know. But no, now that also I know that Adira is non-binary, it's like, well, that's also within the LGBT spectrum, and we do have both of them around, so I'm sort of happy. But again, I'd be very interested if we have any trans viewers within our community to hear their opinions on the matter as well. Because again, like I said, two cis white men, you know, we're not necessarily going to be the most up to date on the politics around that, and I would love to hear it from the community itself.
Oh, exactly. It's always a learning process, especially for fellas like us. It's always a learning process, and it's always something you have to have an open mind for. You know, so I'm interested to see as well. I think that based on the slight, there was no outrage, but based on the slight sort of questioning of the fact that Grey was killed off, but then he kind of isn't killed off, he's still around. It makes me think that perhaps maybe not this season, because obviously it would be almost all finished now, but maybe for next season they'll maybe make more of a feature of Grey in order to sort of combat that, just like they did with Hugh, I suppose.
I would be happy to see that happen. Again, I would like to have more, because again we've got a lot of good diversity within the Grey. I would like to see maybe a trans character featured more prominently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like,
it'd be nice if there was some way for Grey to be able to, obviously that they're at the moment only a spectre in Adira's mind. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice if we could find some way of having ways for Grey to interact with other members of the crew to make them feel like more of a prominent member of Discovery as well.
Exactly, yeah. And like, you know, we've talked about it before off air, like the idea of, it's like some shows have to be the brave ones to really try and drive forward the inclusivity. And I know that there has, like, to be honest with you, unfortunately, there is some people who think that this is Star Trek Discovery pushing an agenda, rather than just telling human stories. And at the end of the day, it's telling human stories.
Yeah, I think it's pushing the agenda of being better people, or trying to be better people and being more inclusive, which I feel is, you know, something Star Trek has stood for since the first incarnation, where they intentionally tried and fought to have a crew of diverse people of different communities, of, you know, and you know, it was difficult at the time because you know, they didn't really want to have that, and trying to make sure that everyone, you know, was respected and treated properly on those sort of crews. So, you know, when people say that, you know, like Star Trek is pushing an agenda, I'm like, of course Star Trek is pushing an agenda. It's been pushing an agenda from the first season. It's been pushing an agenda of inclusivity and the fact that in the future we will be more accepting of each other. So I don't understand the mindset of like, I don't want X type of person on the show. It's like, well, what show have you been watching? To be honest with you, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, it does come from a place of ignorance, and you know, and ignorance isn't a bad thing, as long as when you realize that there is an ignorance there, you actively try to fix it. You know, I think that it is going to appear to some people as jarring in the initial stages, because that's not what you're used to seeing. But at the same time, that's a human story. It's, yes, okay, I'll go along with Emmett and say it is an agenda, but at the same time, if there was no LGBTQ characters in the show, if there was no black characters or people of color in the show, surely that would be pushing an opposite agenda, which I don't really want that agenda pushed, you know? Yeah. I feel like when I say it's an agenda, I mean it's a humanist agenda where we're all just, you know, trying to push forward this idea that we're all people deserving of love and affection. And it shocks me just sometimes how some people will fight against that, you know.
Every single thing that has ever been done in the world has been because of an agenda. And people maybe are thinking of an agenda as an incorrect thing, or as a bad thing. You know, if you didn't have the characters in the show, it's an agenda too. You know, so I think that
there's no such thing as a completely apolitical show, because even in an attempt to avoid politics, that in itself is a political move.
Yeah.
Because it means that you're choosing to ignore certain things, you're choosing to try and avoid certain talking points, and you know, politics is just sort of an integral part of human society and human interaction. And we've been watching politics play out in Discovery, in the sense of like the United Earth Defense Force being very, secluded and, secular, and like, the Federation being, more paranoid, but still trying to reach out to people. Like, it's impossible to avoid politics and things like Star Trek, Star Wars, and everything like that, because it's people interacting with each other, and just naturally politics will come out of that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm interested to see how they do it going forward. I'm for one, and I'm very grateful to the show for doing what they do. It's not uncommon now to see mixed race couples being intimate on camera, and we have to remember Star Trek were the first one to do that. And it's actually there's a nice little bit of trivia about that. William Shatner.
Oh yes.
You know this trivia. So William Shatner was did the kiss with Uhuru, and after they did the take, the director asked for another take where they just hug. Or something. Was this?
It was like where they didn't kiss. They just like sort of embraced.
They embraced, like and Shatner, in order to make it unusable while they were embracing, he very obviously crossed his eyes.
Yeah.
So that whenever they got to the editing room, they had no choice but to use the kiss. So that just shows you, even back in the day, what risk the show was taking, to the point where they wanted a backup just in case.
Yeah, like that's like.
And Shatner's a legend, let's just say.
Yeah, they were getting a lot of pressure from up top, and they, that was their method of forcing the hands of the producer. It's like either you don't have an episode, or you have to take this risk with the interracial kiss. And also let Hugh and Paul kiss more on the show. They are so cute together. I absolutely love them. I know that Paul's a bit prickly, but let them kiss more and stuff. And I feel like Discovery is trying its best. It sometimes fumbles in the matter of presentation or representing people, just in the sense of like killing off. Unfortunately, falling into the bury your gays trope and stuff like that, they're fun. But I think the important thing is that they're trying, and even though that they're fumbling at times, we need to maybe give them credit for the fact that they are doing their best. And with the situation with Hugh, when they realize that they've encountered a problem where they've fallen into a trap, they do try to rectify it to some degree. They don't just like throw up their hands and be like, well, can't do anything about it. They found a way to bring you back in the story, and we got to have our cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Yeah, it's great. Right, Emmett. Well, that was episode 5. I
got very political at the end there. Sorry, lads and gents.
No, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's episode 5. I'm really looking forward now to the further adventures of the Federation. Now that we have a Federation again, what was your sort of quick summation of the episode? Did you like it? Did you think it was one of the best of the season? Did you think it was one of the worst? What do you think?
Was it one of the? I think so. With the crew dynamics was probably still one of my favorites of the season. I did enjoy this episode, but it definitely. I'm more excited for it from a setup perspective, in the sense of it's going to be allowing us to play around with the future Federation more, and I'm excited to see where it comes. But it was a very good episode.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it as well. A lot of setup, a lot more setup in terms of like we're in the world now. It's interesting that it took us to episode 5 to actually get to the Federation, back to our base. So I think there's only 3 episodes left. Am I right? Is it usually 8 or is it 10? I think it might be 10 actually.
Let me just double check while we're on the call. Yeah, I think I've got the thing up.
Yeah, so I think we're at least halfway.
Oh, we have 13 episodes. So
okay, so we're not even halfway through yet. Okay, that makes more sense to me.
We're almost there. We're
almost halfway through. Okay, cool. So actually, so that means that actually makes more sense to me now, because I was wondering why it would be so late in the season. I'm so used to seeing things that are purely made for Netflix and Amazon Prime only having 8 episodes. I'm so happy we got 13 now. That's great.
Yeah. Well, see, Star Trek usually has used to have 20-something episodes in a season, so going down to 13 is half of what we usually work with.
It's a quarter of the year, right? It's a quarter of the year, which is so they get 4 shows in the sequence. But so I thought it was great. Thanks very much for joining me again, Emmett. We are going to see you again next week. If you have any comments about anything we've talked about, I'm sure we've stirred up a lot of thoughts with our political
emotions
and gender identity discussion. As long as we're all civil, we can all have a nice civil discussion. So yeah, I'd love to chat to you about that in the comments. Anything to add before we go, Emmett?
Where's Vulcan? We still haven't heard much about Vulcan. I'm so curious about where Vulcan is in this situation, I feel.
That's going to be great to find out about. All right, guys, so we'll see you next week for episode 6. Thanks very much. Bye. You're watching Sci-Fi Saturday. Discussion and analysis of all your favorite sci-fi TV shows. Only on the Anthony James YouTube channel.